So I'm going to walk you through how I get an ambient sound from my pedal board, and give you a brief description of each pedal, but I'm not going to go in too depth about what each pedal does, but just kind of a general overview and then explain how I use it to get the sound that I want. So we're going to start, and I'll just run through each pedal real quickly, and then I'll explain the process by which how I build out an ambient song. So we'll start here in order. After the tuner coming in, we have the Warden compressor, and that is really to just smooth out the sound and take a little bit off of the initial attack, but mostly give me some sustain. And so the only thing that's on right now, other than the compressor, is this Universal Audio Dream 65 pedal, which is modeling a Fender amp. And so here's the sound completely. With just that amp, and then we'll turn on the compressor and you can kind of see how that smooths out the sound. And the next up is the Attack Decay by Electro-Harmonix. If I turn that on, it's going to completely remove the attack and simulate basically a reverse tape simulator, and you're going to hear the sound will blend up in from nothing and then fade out after a long decay. And I can also do polyphonic, so not just one sound at a time, but if I play a whole chord, it'll blend that whole thing in as well. So I'm going to turn that off for now. Next up is the Old Blood Dark Star. And the way that I like to use that is on delay mode with most things close to 12 o'clock, maybe a little below. You can hear that long pad reverb sitting below as I play. Turn that up. You can also use the hold knob to freeze in the sound, or if you turn while you're playing a note, if you turn that reverb all the way up, then I'm not playing anything and it'll just hold that note. So that's a great way to get a really long pad. This also has pitch mode, where you can do octave up and down with these controls, and crush mode. I usually use delay. Once in a while I'll use pitch. So from there, this is before the drive, the Old Blood Fault 2, and I usually turn on channel 1, have the volume around 1, the gain a little below 12 o'clock. The boost is on or off depending on how much volume I need. There's also crush mode, which I can turn on here, and then a second gain knob controlled by that foot switch. If I need an extra more gain, I can set that individually as well. And then the cool part about this pedal is the 3 independent low, mid, and high sliders. So you can really tune in and fine tune your EQ sound and get exactly what you're looking for. I like to have a bright, the highs turned up but not too much, and you can actually saturate it a little bit by turning these up. Get a bit of a hotter signal there. And so after that, we have this row of Chase Bliss pedals, these 4, and the habit I like to use in collect mode. So I'm going to turn that on now, and then I turn the level all the way down when I start playing, and I'll explain why. As I'm creating loops in other places, it's still listening and recording all the time, and then it'll come back, and once I start turning it up, it'll bring back what I've been playing. Right now I'm going to record something in blooper, which I use more as a standard looper with some extra features on top. Now, so that's been recorded, and I'll just loop indefinitely. I'm going to turn my guitar volume down, so everything now you're hearing is from blooper on out, which will help me explain the rest of these pedals, while also whatever I play will still be recorded into Habit. So next we have Analog Delay, which is the Tonal Recall by Chase Bliss, and that'll just start giving it a nice low frequency analog delay with the repeats turned up. I can make it a little bit brighter, but I like to have it sit just below. And then if I want to add pitch shifting analog delay, then that's what I have Thermae for, to add a little more weirdness into the sound. So right now glide is off. Interval 1 I have set not on, but interval 2 is, I think, an octave up. And then with the LPF, the low pass filter, you can have brighter repeats or darker repeats as well, so that's a really powerful knob to use. And then these set all the divisions, the time divisions of the repeats. So from there we have two options for reverb, a little later reverb, the Sunlight by Old Blood Noise and the Procession. So the Sunlight is a dynamic reverb which has tape, comb, and pass modes. I like to vary what I use using the rate and depth control to control the effects on top of the reverb. The decay is how long it takes to fade out, obviously the mix knob. And then what's cool about this is the input knob, which is set all the way to the right will receive 100% signal of what's coming in. If you turn it down, then it's basically a threshold for your input of what's coming in. And so you can ramp any knob. You can ramp this knob, you could ramp both of these knobs, you could ramp any combination of these knobs. That's a really cool thing about the Sunlight. And then the Procession is probably one of my favorite reverbs, if not my favorite mono reverb that I've had, and it has a great tremolo filter and flange settings. I really like to use the filter setting. I'm going to turn this off just so you can hear this a little bit better. And what I like to do is kind of turn this up so you can hear that filter pretty prominently. So what I'll do is kind of get the speed, slow it down, and then I'll pull back the depth, and then I'll pull back the mix just to the point where it's very subtle, so that you don't notice it all the time, but you kind of notice it as the sweep is coming up, and then it kind of disappears as it goes down. And so the same thing with flange. Can add a lot of really cool movement to your long pads and your slow moving things. It can add some interesting modulation and movement to your sound. The same thing with tremolo. It's just a really lovely tremolo. I love how you can just easily mix in exactly how much you want. So from there, I'm going to turn that off. Then we have the mood, which, just like the Habit, which is listening all the time, the mood is listening. And if it's on here in slip mode, you'll start hearing that reverse octave up thing coming in, which adds a lot of nice ambience, especially with the reverbs and stereo delays later. But for now, it's listening. And then if I hear something I like, I can set that to grab the last couple seconds of audio, pitch it down with clock, and it's now processing audio that's in the loop on the right channel side and also the incoming sound. You can have it only process what's coming in, both, or just what's coming in from the loop. depending on how busy you want it, you know, you change those settings. The clock knob is what really gives you a lot of cool options and things to do with this pedal. So usually I'm in slip mode and then stretch on the left side, on the right side. I'm going to turn this off now so you can hear the microcosm. And this pedal definitely deserves its entire own video, which I'll do at some point, at least how I use it, and go through some more settings. But Mosaic D, these are all the different modes, Mosaic in micro loop mode, and then ABCD, there's 4 options for each mode. And you turn the knob to shift through all those presets. So with Mosaic D on, and then you can click that button to reverse it. Since I'm using usually reverse in this, I like to leave reverse off and just go straight forward in time with this. So you can turn the activity up, you change the shape of the sine of the waves, and then the filter, you get more high end, turn it down. This is a cool knob to ramp with expression or MIDI. Mix is obviously how much of the effects signal is coming through. Repeats and activity will both make it a lot busier, as well as time, which is either setting basically how long until the pedal starts reacting to the incoming sound. Space is a reverb, so you can really wash it out. And by itself, this is almost the whole ambient thing just by itself. You know, if you have the mix knob turned all the way up, then 100% of what you're hearing is just coming from what's coming through microcosm and then what microcosm is doing to pass through. And this is also where I should mention where my stereo out starts. So it's mono in up to this point. The stereo signal goes out of here into my tape delay El Capistan, into a stereo delay of Meris Polymoon, and then stereo reverb is the Neunaber Immerse in wet mode, and then out to stereo into the Dream, into my direct box, into my interface. And so even just that little bit that I played and looped already is kind of one good layer. And then I can play on top of that. I can turn my guitar back up, turn on the Attack Decay. I gotta turn the mix down here. And so even just with those 2 layers of me playing and then the blooper sending a loop into microcosm can get very busy very quickly. So I'm gonna turn everything off. Clear out the blooper loop. And I'm gonna show you how now I build typically an ambient kind of starting point for my live streams, and when I'm playing a longer form, you know, song that I'm trying to build out that will give it a couple loops that are playing independently. So normally what I'll start is with maybe Dark Star on and the tonal recall, and what I will do is go into loop mode on microcosm and start looping. Once I start playing something into the looper, it's pre-effects, which means I can still process the whatever mode I'm in, the effects after the loop that I recorded. So it'll be listening to that and whatever sound is coming in. So and turn up my guitar here. So this is going to repeat over and over and over again. I can independently control the level of that loop. So then what I'll start to do is I'll turn on my stereo effects, make sure that's good. So I just have the looper going into the stereo effects and make sure that that is a nice like starting point for the main kind of bass loop of this. And all the while I'm still listening with habit. So then I will start playing something in blooper. And the important thing to remember is to space out your notes, because since you're looping layers on top of each other, it will fill up, and obviously the delays and the reverbs is really going to fill up the sound. So one thing I can do with my loop in the microcosm is slow that down, octave it down to half speed, and that gives a little more space because everything's now going slower. Yeah, so we have mood on. I like to blend that in just really, really subtly. And then volume on blooper should be around noon is unity. You can get it a little bit of drive if you turn it up. If you want to keep it clean, keep it right around noon. When my repeat's up, I can turn stability up to give it a little bit of wobbly sound. And then the modifiers I have set up to really kind of mangle the loops and mix up the order of the notes a bit, as well as in the second modifier I have as the filter, so I can remove some bass from that and turn the filter up. So now you're hearing this is blooper. So that sounds like a nice loop coming from blooper. I start to mix back in the loop from microcosm. And then on top of that, I can play very sparsely, maybe even some notes, some single notes with the Attack Decay on. Because again, the habit will be listening to this as well. And so the habit is just picking up all the layers that I've played so far. And eventually I can start slowly bringing in the habit, and if I want to add in even different places from the habit, I can bring in scan. So not only am I getting the main loop, but then scan is going back and finding other sounds from different places in habit and mixing that together. So really right now, without playing, I have a loop from here, the microcosm, a loop in blooper, and basically two things happening in habit. So that's 4 different layers of independent loops, and then, you know, delays and reverbs. And another, you know, important thing to note is that not every pedal is on all the time. So I might record a loop and use Darkstar, but then the second loop I might turn it off. And obviously everything after the loops, you know, you want to be really careful not to overdo it. So right now I'm not even using the El Capistan, I'm not using the Procession, I'm not using Thermae. And so it just kind of worked out like that, that I'm ended up only using, you know, a little more than half the pedals that are reverbs and delays to process the sounds. Again, to keep space and to keep a more of a minimalistic approach to the sound. So that's basically it. Thank you for watching and listening, and if you have any questions or you want to see a longer, more in-depth demo of a specific pedal, let me know in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos coming, and I will see you next time.